Okay, something different for Campbell's Camels tonight. Anthony Jupp, hello.
Hello, Paul. How are you, mate?
Very good. More commonly known on Twitter, especially as Juppy, or a lot of other things. And you do wear a few hats. A little bit of the background, actually. The hats that we want to talk about with tonight. How's that sound?
Yes, I've been in wagering basically all my life. I've been involved in either on-course or online bookmaking for the last 25 years, both here in Victoria and internationally as well. A couple of years ago when I was at Swiftbet, I worked a lot of the country cups on the circuit, being on course, and also worked in all the offices. Used to trade harness and greyhound for Sportsbet back in the day. Worked overseas, basically seen it all. One of my earliest memories was going with my late grandmother to Yarra Glen back in the day to the trots there, especially the big meetings on Melbourne Cup Day. I remember watching Jearn win a Melbourne Cup in the early 90s maybe.
Yep.
And it was pouring with rain, and her and her sister were sitting there talking while everyone else was watching that. But there would have been 20 bookmakers in the ring there that day, and that sort of just captured my heart. She used to take me to Moonee Valley. When I was a youngster myself, I used to get out there often growing up in Melbourne. So remember what those times were like, and then also seeing what it's like now. And I'd also probably describe myself, I also describe myself as a proud Central Victorian.
Yep.
And also more of a casual harness racing fan. Have sort of slightly more than a passing interest in it.
But a racing lover?
Yes.
Yep.
But someone that's heavily engaged, and someone who bets, and a punter as well. But a lot of my business these days now is mainly on sport, but still love it, still get keen for the big races. Some of the new stuff hasn't sort of grabbed me, like I know the Eureka's coming up only because it floods your sort of social media stuff, but I'm a bit of a traditionalist in that regard. You look forward to the Hunter Cup, the Victoria Cup, the Country Cups, like there's Bendigo Cups, like if there was a race I could win, this would be it, trying to win the hometown cup.
Right, so a lot has been said lately, and we're here at Bendigo, and coincidentally, only because we both come here, and the trots were on, so we said, we'll do it here at the trots. Daniel Hibbert's talking, you should be able to hear us over the top of this, and hopefully everyone can, but at the rally, recent rally, it was brought up, and Father Glasheen brought it up in regards to we should have stayed with the TAB, we shouldn't have allowed bookmakers in, because all of a sudden now bookmakers aren't touching us. So the idea of this conversation started, you and I talking about it. A lot of people don't understand it. I'm not going to put my hand up and say I'm across everything, but I am across a lot of it, and I do understand the where we sit and where the industry sits in the betting market. And I wanted to take the opportunity to give people a chance to be aware where they sit.
As I said, I've been in it for 25 years. I can't remember a tougher time.
Yep.
I wasn't in wagering, and it was a completely different set of circumstances in the early 90s there when we had that recession. The amount of money that's flowing around through the environment at the moment is a hell of a lot less than what it was, especially during COVID, but even pre-COVID.
And that is one thing that I think a lot of people, potentially even at the rally, need to stop and have a little bit of a look at the rest of the world. I mean, there is zero growth. They actually said today there is zero growth, and projections for the next 3 months is zero growth.
Yeah. So the GDP's been flat.
Yeah.
Now, I've spoken to a few people here tonight that are well within the bubble. Fuel's gone up, feed's gone up, all that sort of stuff's gone up. But that's not just within the harness industry, that's across the board. That's, you go to the supermarket, you go for a night out, your school fees, your electricity bill, everything's gone up. So the way that I've been equating it, say 2 years ago when I was out there actively trying to sign clients up when I was at Swiftbet, there were plenty of people that you met that come the weekend might have 100 or 200 to put into an account, and that was their recreational money for the week. Well, if those people have got 10, 20, at maximum $50 left now, they're doing well because the cost of living and everything else is just eaten into that.
And I'd imagine a little bit of that, there'd be a bit of a worry with they nearly put that in their pocket. Instead of betting, in case they don't have that 50 next week.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, times are hard in that regard. Yeah. Now, I know it was sort of old thinking what they said at the rally with the tab. Because almost if you drew a linear line with the trajectories of both the sport here in Victoria and the fortunes of the tab over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they've pretty much gone down almost linear with one another. In a lot of cases, the JV might have looked good when they signed it, the joint venture when they signed up to be partners, but it was very clear later on that they were getting left behind by it.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, the previous boards, however long ago, they dropped the ball there. GRV, next door here, something different. They were probably saved in a lot of cases by signing that big sponsorship deal with Sportsbet. If you go next door, you'll have no doubt who their sponsor is, because it's plastered everywhere. Here, there might be one sign for one wagering agency. I think there might still be a tab sign over there coming around the back straight.
Oh yeah, there is too.
Yep. So there might be one. So basically what happened at around the turn of the century with the proliferation of the online guys and all that sort of stuff, the industry also almost handed over the promotion and the
keys
to the industry to the corporates. So, but the corporates then steered the punters into what they were going to get the most value out of, and any business would.
Yeah.
So that was same game multis, whether it's betting on sport, whether it's money back second and third, that sort of stuff. And because harness racing was anchored to the tab, it meant that they got left out of a lot of that stuff, and that's left them behind.
And a little bit of that would be, I would imagine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the TAB would be complacent because we've got the trots, and the trots would be a little bit complacent because we've got the tab, and everyone's going to. So, and I'm not saying people will sleep at the wheel. I'm not picking on anyone, but that complacency and a long-term contract can breed that.
And it was complacency because the tab thought that they were just going to keep flowing along. Gill ripped the Band-Aid off last week when he took over as CEO.
And this happened after the rally.
Yeah. And it showed how bad the situation was at Tabcorp. It's a $1.3 billion write-down.
Yeah.
Like, they've just ripped the Band-Aid right off. There's still parts of that business that are very good. They've still got the Sky Channel assets and all that sort of stuff. But there's some other things there. The other question that I'd like to pose to yourself and all the viewers, they've just run a race here at Bendigo now. How different does that race now look to a race that was run here 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago? Really, there hasn't been that much change, has there?
No,
the horses are probably
got a couple of things I want to ask you with that, but you're spot on, and you're right. And the worst part is too, we just ran a race and you and I didn't even turn our heads. I know a grey horse won it, but
the thing about it is, the only things that I can think of off the top of my head is the horses are probably going a second and a half, a quarter quicker, and the sulkies have changed.
Yeah, and for the purists, there's so many things we can see, but we're the purists. But for the person that's living in Golden Square at the minute, and they're sitting there watching Channel 7, and they're bored, and they probably want some stimulation, they ain't going to turn to the trots.
Harness racing probably had more cut through when I was, as I said, 25 years ago, when I was 17, 18, like in my late teens, when it was on Channel 31 in Melbourne. Like, I grew up in Melbourne, but it was a totally different time then. Like, the tab used to shut at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
It was a form of entertainment. There was no casinos. There was only a proliferation starting to get with the poker machines. Like, it's probably a sign of my age, but people would remember that there was the buses used to run across the border to go and play the pokies for the day. Yeah. Now you can go to 6 or 8 venues here in Bendigo to be able to do it.
There's one 3K up the road.
Yeah. So you're competing for that entertainment dollar. The other thing that people have got to realise, and another thing that they said there was, I've got an idea, but it'd take someone like Jason Scott up there in Queensland, who's got the 3 codes, maybe Tassie, but you'd have to get everyone on board. What I'd love to see, but it's whether we've actually got the intestinal fortitude to do it. I think the other thing that a lot of people don't realise with the tote products and the exotics, whatever you see in the quaddie pool, say tonight here at Bendigo, I can guarantee you that a company like Sportsbet would be holding about 5 times whatever's in the pool.
Yeah. And I want to get on to the bookmakers, and this was one of the things that was brought up. And the reality is a lot of them do copy and paste, and there's someone will set a market, and so anyone wondering, they set a market, and other people just follow because they don't want to employ someone to do the TAB, and we'll get to why that is in a second. They wait till the first person's released their inks. Minimum bet laws are not the same as they are in the thoroughbreds, which has been one, and it's only just been introduced. It is a year, I reckon.
So. One thing that came out of the rally was, and I think Shane Glary phrased it as, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just going off my recollection, punters love betting at Melton because we hold 40% more at Melton than we do anywhere else. I'll put out a challenge to HRV then. Do a trial where you put metropolitan MBL laws on either a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night here at Bendigo or at Ballarat, and you watch what happens.
And that's minimum bet laws.
Yes. Yep. Because what's happening is a lot of the turnover is coming from the top 2 or 3% of the punters. Yep. The guys that are actively betting every day, doing form, they're rusted on, and that's their income.
Yep.
So if you're giving them the chance to wager twice as much.
Is it twice as much? Well,
yes. Generally, if it's Metro, then they double the limits. Well, I know that's certainly the case with the thoroughbreds.
And so it's the same as the thoroughbreds?
Yes. Yep. So I know for I'm working at Moonee Valley on Saturday. I've got to bet them to win 2,000. If I was working at Bendigo on Sunday, I've only got to bet them to win 1,000.
Okay.
And it's a similar situation compared to the metropolitan meetings and the non-metro meetings.
So is everyone affected by that? Is the TAB
That's
affected?
everyone.
TAB?
Yep.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how big or small you are. So you could be the littlest online bookmaker that does no marketing, nothing, who might hold 25 grand a week. I've still got to bet
to lose 1,000 or 2,000
or 1,000. Depending on what that is.
And we're not sure on what it is in the trots.
I think it's.
Doesn't matter. We won't worry.
Yeah, I'm just a bit rusty because I've been out of that side of it for a little while.
So that in itself is an issue. And again, in the trots, it hasn't, I'll say 2 years, but it hasn't been that long ago. I know there was a push for it to actually physically come in.
I think the win part of it's been there, and they've just brought in the place part. Okay. The win stuff's been there for a while.
Yep.
But they've just brought in the place part of it as well. But it's something that's unique to Australia. Because when I was in the UK, there was none of that. It was if they thought they were going to beat you long term, they'd throw you out.
Yep.
So we've always had that here where, and a lot of the on-course bookies kicked up for this. They're saying, well, I'm going to Flemington on Saturday or Moonee Valley on a Saturday night where there's 100 people here, and I've got to bet them to win 1,000, and yet these guys are holding 50 times more than I have, and they don't have to bet them anything. So they had to bring that in to make it fair which they have done.
Which is great.
Yeah, because but that also magnifies another issue. So if we went and said, righto, we are going to just double the MBLs, what you've also got to be very careful of is everyone thinks that the corporate bookies now are all making fortunes. Mm-hmm. It might have been the case during COVID and after it, no longer the case now. 40%.
Gets back to that economic downturn as part of it. And
sports bets revenue's down by about 40%.
Yep.
We saw the tabs results, and all the blokes that I talk to in the industry, a lot of them are eating the paint off the wall. So what you've got to be careful of there, I think it was Father Glash had said, bookies should be betting in between 105 and 110%. I'd love to be able to do that. The only problem with that is I probably can't pay my fees to
the clubs, everything.
To the PRAs, which is HRV in this case, and my point of consumption tax back to the government, whatever else, to about 128 to 130%.
Yeah.
If it's beyond that, that's when we start making money.
Yeah.
But if I go under that, it's just a loss leader.
Right. So percentage. Explain percentage to me, if that makes sense.
Basically, what happens is the more you charge to bet on a product, simple 50-50 is a coin flip. There's your 100%. 50% heads, 50% tails. In an ideal world, we'd be coming down as close to 100% as we could.
Yeah.
But we don't live in an ideal world.
So you'll set your market, as you said, so 50-50, so 2 to 1, 2 to 1.
Evens and evens.
Sorry.
Yep.
And that's how you set your market.
Yeah.
So when you have 10 runners, you've got to try and get it as close to, for this instance, 100%.
Yep. So what I'd be doing is if it was a 10-runner race here, I know that with the baked-in costs that I've got to set a market to probably an opening market, if you were going to put it up like that, probably to about 150% because I've got to allow for price discovery this is the other thing they've done. Rather than employing people to do it, a lot of the companies have outsourced it to the smart punters who are going to bet with them anyway.
Bet with them anyway.
So what they might, that's why you see in these opening markets, you see these savage market fluctuations, because what it's cheaper for me to do as an operator is, okay, I've profiled this client, I know what his behaviour is, I know he's going to beat me long term, especially on the early stuff. If he takes a price, I'm going to turn it off really savagely, and then as it comes closer, I'll edge it out. And then when I get a little bit of resistance coming back the other way, I know that's what the actual price is. If I keep it just below that, I can keep laying it, try and average my price out. And then if that's the case, I should be in a strong position if I've got liquidity. And that's the other problem we've got is the recreationals.
Hang on. We'll get to that part. But basically, so back to the percentages, is that what you were saying to me then is that the smart guy comes along, all of a sudden you're like, right, I've got to get this to 180%. This is way out from the race.
No, so what I'd do there is I'd still try and keep, say, that 150% mark, but I'd turn one off and I should be pushing the rest out to try and get
back to
something out of there. The last thing I want to do is say, and with the minimum bet law, say it's to win $1,000, it's $11. He thinks it should be $3. So he has 100 on it at $11 to win 1,000. I then turn it right off, and then I edge it out. But what I'm going to do is,
so instead of say, right, if it was me, instead of winding it down to $10, say, oh, Paul might be on something with him, with those smart people. You go, right, this goes to $3, $2.
Just turn it right off. And what we can do, because I've still got room to move, because it's an opening price, I can push that back out. Where the real price might be $6.
Yep.
But I'm just going to edge it out until I meet a little bit of resistance coming back the other way, and then I've got a rough idea that that's where the price should be. Then I've got to try and lay 3 or 4 others, because otherwise I'm just going to have this thing that I've laid at the wrong price,
$1,000,
and I'm just going to get handled on the race. Now, if I'm holding 10,000 on the race,
back to your liquidity, back up to
if I'm holding 10,000 or more on the race, laying him to lose 1,000 probably doesn't matter that much.
No,
but if I'm holding 1,200 on it, then I've got a big problem. So that's where they're running into this sort of thing. If you make that minimum bet law, this is another point that I'd like to make. Since COVID, we've had an explosion. There's now 140 WSPs that can bet on harness racing. Wagering service providers, bookies. Whether it's the exchange, whether it's the tab, whether it's the big 3 or 4 in Ladbrokes and Sportsbet and 365, or the tiniest, littlest on-course bloke that has a website. If they turned harness racing off tomorrow, I doubt very much whether they'd lose a client of value.
And that was the end part that I wanted to get to. But
that's how stark it is, because they put it on there as product to give them something to put on their website. If it became too expensive or too much of a hassle, they just drop it.
And this is probably a little bit of a juggle for the governing body, HRP. That they understand minimum bets. They want to work in with it. They understand the point of consumption tax. Which is what, actually, sorry, it was one of the ones I had to ask you. So
there's thresholds depending on how much you turn over. So
okay.
if you're a little bookie and you stay under, I think
I'm not worried about the percentages, but just
so basically, if I'm a smaller bookie and I stay under 20 million in turnover for the year, I don't have to pay point of consumption. If I grow my business, then I've got to pay it.
I see. It's encouraged to stay smaller.
Yes, and that's why there's 140, because often you'll find is there's some companies that might have 4 or 5 brands. To be able to sort of move that around to even that out. So what's happening at the minute with the current structure is no one's being encouraged to turn over more money. That's been sort of taxed out of it. You look at a company like Top Sport, who 3 or 4 years ago were one of the leaders in the industry. They did a lot of trading, a lot of betting back, turned over a lot of money. They've basically dropped their turnover with levers they've pulled, not through the economic stuff, but just by saying basically we can't afford to turn over that because the model's changed. We've actually had to drop our turnover and ratchet it right back so that we can stay under these tax thresholds and not go to that next level and pay more.
So I could sit here and say, right, well, TAB, there's not a lot of TAB turnover, so you bet into that. The flip side of that is, because you're winding everything back, your staff are less. If there's less liquidity, less money being wagered on the event, easier to flick it off. And this is the reality, and this is what I want people to be aware of, that it could happen, and we're going to comment on something there in a minute, but it definitely could happen where people could turn off.
As I said, there's 140 WSPs, and apart from maybe the top, say 10 to 15, there'd be 125 of them that could literally turn it off tomorrow, and you might get 2 or 3 people come through on their live chat saying, where's the Charlton meeting or wherever it is, and they say, well, we're just not offering it anymore, because for what it's worth, it's actually not worth the time. That's why there's not 27 different companies coming up with early prices, because if they had to do that, then they just wouldn't offer it.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to basically have 1 or 2 companies price it up, scrape the odds off them, feed that in with whatever over around the percentage you want to bet, and then offer that.
And effectively, probably I might be wrong, but not necessarily try and make a margin or anything, but it's actually, like you said, space. It's filler.
Yeah.
It's content. It's for the person that says, "Rightio, I'm going to go look at sports bets today. What do they got on? Oh, next race at Bendigo," and the runners are out there on the track.
Yeah.
That's effectively what they're doing with minimal loss, and I'm not going to say minimal care, but it probably suits a lot of them.
It's the same as when you go and look at their sports offering and you're thinking, why are they offering third division Chilean soccer? It's just content for the websites.
Yeah,
and the recreationals are literally, they've got a certain amount of time. That's why a lot of the greyhounds, if you go and talk to some of the younger people, and this is another thing that came out of the rally. Shane Glary said we need to talk to thoroughbred punters and survey them. No.
It's a different field.
No. You don't need to talk to thoroughbred punters. You need to talk to punters, full stop.
Yeah.
You need to talk to all of them. Because if you go back and look over the last 5, 10, 15 years, the turnover on sports kept climbing, but the turnover on racing and harness racing has gone directly down. 2 reasons. It's more expensive for the companies to offer, and the sports have got a direct connection with the generation that's come through.
Yep.
The only other racing code that's kind of grabbed that, say, 35 and under, is the greyhounds, for a couple of reasons. It's quick and it's colourful.
Yep.
And if they've got an hour, it means that they can probably bet on 15 races in that hour, and they can turn that money over and over and over.
And it's also consistent.
Yes.
They run at consistent tracks, consistent times. They very, very rarely change those. So they do understand what it is. And I'm not being cheeky with that. I don't want anyone to think I'm being cheeky. I actually love the fact that Bendigo race on a Wednesday night, Shepparton on a Tuesday night. It's possibly something that should have happened 10 years ago.
As long as you've got continuity, I think that was a key thing when they left Moonee Valley. And I've spoken to plenty of people that are sort of my vintage. I'm 44. Those people that were around and grew up when Moonee Valley was on. Every Saturday night you knew that Moonee Valley was on.
Yep.
The first was always at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
So you knew that was the time for the trots.
Okay, so I'll throw it back at you. You said there before, trots haven't changed. There's no innovation.
Yeah.
A lot of people say about Melton. I'm older than you,
yeah,
and I'm like, well, we had to get away from Moonee Valley because we were told that it was crippling us, whether it was or not.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we were told that it was crippling us, so we had to get away, so we have to innovate. So, we're changing.
There's changing and there's innovation.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And that's the hard part, because there's been change for change's sake, and there's actually innovation. As a casual fan, at least as a casual fan 20 years ago when we were at Moonee Valley, or let's go back exactly 20 years to 2004, I knew that the main meeting in Victoria every week started at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night at Moonee Valley. I couldn't tell you unless I'm actually gone looking, I couldn't tell you now when the main metropolitan meeting, I don't know whether it's on a Friday night, I don't know whether it's on a Saturday night where it starts 8 minutes after the last race, thoroughbred race in Melbourne. It's been here, there and everywhere. It's never had a home. The only times that I do know is when it's Bendigo Cup night, Shepparton Cup night, Ballarat Cup night. I know that they're going to be on a Saturday night, and I know the weather's going to be warm.
Yeah, because of that consistency, which we need to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And this might be a differing opinion. I'd hate to see the little clubs be lost, because I think if you do that, that's going to hasten wherever you're heading here.
So does that we look, people look at it and say, it's an expense.
Yeah.
And things along those lines. But does that still get your casual punter that we still need, and we then need to fall in love with this, keep falling in love with the sport?
If you lose the grassroots, one thing the AFL, if you say AFL is the benchmark of sports in this country, especially in this part of the world, what have they done better than nearly everyone else? Auskick. There was a couple of cheeky laughs when I mentioned it. You guys have got the pony trots. And not only that, it's kids seeing kids do it like what the adults are doing it. It's a selling point that no one sells. Why couldn't we look at something like, especially here in the regional areas, run a school excursion from one of the primary schools in Maryborough today and take them through everything? Here's the driver's room, here they are tacking up horses, and teach them all about it. Here's the animals, here's how we look after the animals. Here's the mobile. 2 kids can go for a ride in the mobile for the time that they're there. But introduce them to it. It's happening more in the city, where there's a disconnect between the city and the country. Most kids in the city, if you ask them where milk comes from, they'll tell you it's a carton and not from a cow. So I don't think you can lose those grassroots opportunities. And no, that they get crowds.
Yeah.
Like, I've been to Bort in the last couple of years, to tick them all off my list. I've been to Bort, I've been to Birchip and those sort of places. The 2 crowds that they get at Bort are nearly as...
All right, so throw it back at you. Do they punt?
The thing is, but you have to get them interested for them to punt. They're not just going to walk in and start...
No, but if you go to Bort, do they punt at that meeting?
Do the people there? Yeah, like when I've been there, I've held money there.
Yeah.
And it's been reasonable.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think there's other things you can do to tweak the product.
Yeah.
By bringing
No.
Especially those smaller tracks. I think if you go back and talk to one of the key features that they've got that differentiates from the harness from the thoroughbreds is that for most cases you get right up close to the action. And you can do that at those small tracks, because if you go and speak to a lot of those older folks that were here that have been through the showgrounds era, they said the showgrounds was great. It was an amphitheatre. You got right up close. You could nearly reach over the outside.
There was nothing else on when they were on. That's
why. But that was the other thing. But also, you could get right up close to it. Don't lose that. If you need to handicap them and have stand starts, the trotters were in a similar situation 4 or 5 years ago where we didn't have any trotters in the Dominion, but we took the time and invested into it. And now the trots side of it, the square gators, are absolutely thriving. That's a key part of the industry. I think if you took the time and put the infrastructure in place to get them the stand starts and teach them to step and teach the starters how to do it properly if we need to, it opens up a world of possibilities, because it means that instead of having closely graded horses with only 6 in a race, all of a sudden we can handicap them where we've got 12 horses in a race, which is far more optimal for wagering.
A lot of people don't get that. They don't.
Here's the thing. I'm going to tell you.
Hang on one sec.
Here's the thing. I'm going to tell this straight, and all the stats will back this up. The optimal field size is in between 10.5 and 12. If you're consistently getting that, you're getting a wagering product that's attractive, because you're not going to get that many odds on favourites, and also you're getting more multiple opportunities and place opportunities. It's something that has to be explored, because currently the field size, and it's one competitive area that you have over the greyhounds that are capped at 8.
Yeah.
So whether it means you've got to tighten up by running less meetings with bigger fields, that's something that probably needs to be looked at. And the other thing that they did make, which was a brilliant point, that yes, they need to share the resources, but it's the same with also that they say, it's expensive to maintain these tracks. Flemington's the most well-resourced track in Australia, probably. But Liam still goes out and helps 2 or 3 country clubs. So do the guys at Caulfield. So does Marty at Moonee Valley. Why couldn't we have a central pool of stuff, say here in this part of the state, in the west and in the south, where, okay, they've got that stuff, that equipment that they need, that's easily transportable, so that, yes, we know we've got the once-a-year meeting coming up at Birchip, but they've got a month run into it. Yeah. Let's go and make sure that that's prepared as well as we can to have it there, because I think the way that it's heading, you need to sort of keep, if we're going to be running for lower prize money, because, and the thing is, I'm not going to really touch on the management side of it.
No, I'm happy not to worry too much more about the rally, and it's not here to pick on the rally. No. That was brought up about the rally.
You know the best part about the rally? That's the most amount of people I've ever seen here, and they were all passionate that took the time to come out. It shows people care about the industry.
Yeah.
But what I'm asking all those people is just to take a step back.
Get back here in the camera.
Yeah, but go and talk to people that are outside of the industry and say, why don't you bet on it?
Yeah.
What can we do differently? What would get you here?
Well, that's one of the reasons you are here. Because for me, you bought the different. And we need people to think different and be aware of it. And it's quite interesting that post the rally, and I said we're definitely not here, Tabcorp come out and announce 1.3 billion with a B, capital B, dollar write-off.
Yep.
And that's hard to get our head around. But we all want more prize money and all the rest of it. We only get it from one spot.
Yeah.
And we need to change that. Now, the other thing you showed me today is Gareth Hall's done an interview with the CEO of Racing Queensland.
Jason Scott up there in Queensland, very good operator. He used to be at Ladbrokes.
So you say it.
So Jason, who I don't doubt, and he gets wagering, and he's covering the 3 codes up there. And Gareth asked him the question, what's happening with sort of harness racing? And Jason said it far more eloquently than I can. He said what we need to get to the bottom of is in the evening time slot on Sky Channel, harness racing takes up in between 40 and 45% of the airtime, but only generates 9% of the revenue.
On that night, on those individual nights.
In that time slot.
And that's a massive thing that the industry need. And when I say the industry, I got no doubt head office know it. I mean, if Jason knows it, I'm sure it's not a kept secret or anything along. Well, it's definitely not now anyway. But the people in this race here, the people in the next race, the people that have raced today at Merritt, we have to be aware, one, we're in an entertainment business, and the only way we get our money, if you like, well, it's not the only way, but our main source of the money is through TAB and Sky Channel for this entertainment. And all of a sudden you're saying that we take up 45% of a night time, so for a 4-hour time slot, we're nearly taking up 2 hours.
Yep.
Yet we're producing less than 10%.
Yep.
And
so
that's bad,
be
but that's a reality. That's a reality people need to be aware of.
It's reality, and it should be horrifying for anyone involved.
Yeah.
And the question you've then got to ask yourselves harness racing Twitter is some of the most passionate people that I follow, right? And a lot of them get their backs up when the novices come in and call them cheats on seats and all this sort of stuff. Take a step back, and rather than getting offended, we need to examine why they're calling them that.
Spot on.
And why that stigma remains, and what we can do to change it, and how you can sell that message better so that the next generations coming through don't feel like that about your product.
Yeah.
If it's just a stigma thing, like, show that it's completely clean.
Yeah.
But there's been nothing that's been told to the outside bubble about what's in place to stop any of that stuff happening. That's been a big disconnect, and a part of that has been when the industry became in the JV and got welded to Tabcorp and Sky Channel.
Complacency.
Well, both knew, there was complacency, but both knew that no one could go anywhere. Well, as an outside observer, Sky Channel haven't treated harness racing particularly well or served their needs. If I was harness racing, I would have done something completely different, especially now. I'd be going to GRV and say, how about we get together on a Saturday night and let's put a package together to go on racing.com, which is not only available on the digital platforms, it's also available on free-to-air, and it'll give them an extra 4 or 5 hours of content on a Saturday during the peak wagering time. It could flow straight out of their thoroughbred coverage into there, and it solves a few issues for a few people. It gives harness racing and greyhound racing extra exposure, and it gives racing.com and extra content which they need. Because currently, if you flick racing.com on a Saturday night, unless there's a meeting, you're watching replays of the 2 meetings during the day.
Yeah.
Which most of your apps would have that now anyway, where you can go and find that replay of that race if you want to. So that live content, and that's what they were doing. It's almost Back to the Future in a way, what they were doing with Channel 31 with Billy Hutchison and Rob Gaylard and all that way back in the day with Tanya. Like, that was, I grew up with that sort of stuff, but you need to be able to putting it out there and making it accessible. And because they were a slave to the clock on Sky Channel, that was also, I think it was a bit of an excuse to sack the stand starts, because I will get bumped to Sky 2. Well, currently you're on a hiding to nothing anyway, because half your races are finished. I don't know whether it's half. I'm just plucking that figure out of thin air. There is a chunk of races that are getting bunted to Sky 2 anyway, especially if you're anywhere near a race from New South Wales that has that agreement where they have to have a little bit of clear air.
Yeah, because part of our agreement was no lead-in time, which was the stupidest.
And you have to give... The thing is, if you do that, you allow the storytelling.
Yeah.
Which has been completely lost, because Sky Channel's a poker machine model, and people might like, but it is. It's they hit the line in one race, and it doesn't matter whether it's the Hunter Cup, the Melbourne Cup, or the Birchup Cup. As soon as they hit the line, they're crossing to wherever the next venue is.
They haven't even all hit the line.
Yeah.
Once the fourth horse has been named, they're gone. Yeah.
So that might work for that real turnover punters, but it doesn't. I don't think it serves the industry that well. There's definitely a need for it, but I don't know whether it serves us that well.
Right, the exchange.
Yep.
I personally think we do not embrace it enough. I think we have an opportunity with a unique platform to be able to do it. One, you can see them.
Yep.
And we know a couple of guys that do it. Do we get enough return as far as... I don't need you to actually... I probably don't even want you to answer that. As a bookmaker, though, can you see some merit, like what you're saying there before, as a TV product? If you're on the exchange, it's ideal.
Let's go back a step, because a lot of people might not even know what the exchange is.
Sorry, Betfair.
Betfair is an exchange, and basically what it does is it allows Paul and I to bet amongst ourselves. It's basically a clearinghouse. It's like shares. So if I say, I think this horse should be $2.50, I think I'm happy to back it at $2.50. Paul say, well, I don't think you could win, and $2.50 is too short, so I'll match your bet. Yep. The problem that's happened to Betfair is they haven't done a good enough story explaining to the rest of the industry what they are. They're not a corporate bookmaker. They're basically just an exchange that takes a little clip of the ticket as their way of resulting the bets, having the platform that the punters can bet amongst themselves. It's peer-to-peer betting. So it's no different to you and I standing here and playing two up, and you go, well, like you do on Anzac Day, you want heads, I want tails, put the $20 on the floor underneath the sandbag, toss the coin, and we'll see what happens. What happens there is that of that $20, they probably take, in an ideal world, they take 20 cents or something out of it. And then that's for them to run the platform, do their marketing, try and bring more liquidity in. Because if you look at some of the big markets on Betfair, go and have a look at the US presidential market, for example, there's some events where there's untold fortunes turned over on it, and there's some where there's next to nothing.
Yep.
But the problem is the way they're taxed doesn't allow them to do that, because it's taxed at so high a rate that they can't promote the product, because there's no upside for them to do it, because they're basically not making any money out of it anyway. They're better off letting it just go and exist without really pushing it.
But it's potentially something that HRV, probably with some government intervention because of the taxings and things along those lines, potentially look at.
Yeah.
Because if you came here on a Wednesday night, you could end up with 20 blokes here with computers.
Yeah,
and they could even be betting against each other.
Or they can be at home.
Well, this is the thing, though, and this is where Betfair, anyone wondering why Betfair works, ground stop, I think it's within 30 seconds with Betfair of the advertised start time. I know they're not allowed to bet in running.
No, they're not allowed to bet in running on the dogs.
And the thoroughbreds, you can bet in running, but you can't see them. Like, you've got to have binoculars on, they're miles away.
Yeah, or there's some... It's funny, because as you say, you can see them here. If you go across to the jockey club for a meeting there was normally one or two sitting on the kids' play equipment at about the 400-metre mark.
Yep.
And if you go to Moonee Valley, there's certain points in the grandstand where there'll be. Also, there's other guys that will go to the course purely and simply for the reason that the on-course vision... So... To give the punters at home a bit of an exercise, the quickest you can see it is like where Paul and I are. We're standing here naked eye. The next quickest after that would be an on-course feed that's coming straight in.
And there is one at most tracks, and if you ask the smart blokes, they know where it is.
Correct. The next one after that's the radio.
Yep.
And then after that, it would be something like Sky Channel, and then after that, it's racing.com. So if you're if you're just a thoroughbred punter hacking around bettingoffracing.com,
hang on, for our trotting people, it's then Trots Vision, which is 45 seconds to a minute behind.
If you were trying to bet in run off Trots Vision, you will get eaten alive. I'm telling everyone to gamble responsibly. If you're doing that, I've probably got to put you in for an RSG because you need to be looked at because you're doing it wrong.
But what we could do with this sport here, you're saying about innovation for
Yep.
mine, is actually embrace something like that.
Yep.
Sell it, advertise it, explain it.
Yep.
And get the message. There'll be a lot of people maybe listening to this. Hopefully there's a lot of people listening to it and they'll be saying, but we don't get much back from it. But what we do get is innovation.
But the other thing with that is, though, if you've got a strong, robust exchange, it's the anchor point that anchors the rest of the industry to it. Because you can buy and sell and you can back and lay, it leads to something called an arbitrage opportunity. So, say for argument's sake, I can have 100 on something at $2 with an on-course bookie. Say, Juppy Bet's here, I've got me board up and I'm $2 about this horse because I want to lay it. You can back it with me at $2 and have 100 on it. So if it wins, you get 100, but you can lay it on the exchange at $1.90 for 100. Which means that if it wins, you'll collect 100 off me, but you'll pay Paul, who backed it on 100. The exchange, 90.
No,
so you've made $10 for no risk. If it doesn't win, then you haven't lost. But if you then lay it for $103, you'll have what they call a green book, which means that you'll have a positive result no matter what happens. That's an arbitrage opportunity. It's the same with trading shares and that sort of stuff. And there are guys that are on the exchange doing that all day, and there are guys that are trying to hit the bookies to be quick enough to be able to do that. But you need liquidity to be able to do it.
And that arbitrage is actually, there are, as you just said then, blokes, that's all they want to punt.
Yep.
Low risk.
Yep.
Low risk, just turn $1 over, but a lot of times, and that's where the greyhounds.
And it's a lot of automated stuff. So that's when you can get your turnover up.
Yeah.
Bookmakers absolutely hate them because they're a loss leader for the most part.
A lot of work for not much return.
Yeah. And currently, those sort of punters, this, as I said, with the I need to be 130%. That means for the recreational punters that are just might have their 200 a week, they lose that quicker because
you're not giving them the best odds.
So what happens is the difference between, say, 110% market and 130% market is the favourite in 130% market might be $3, whereas in 110% market it might be $3.50, $3.60. Well, if you're backing a winner, that means you've got an extra $50 or $60 there if you're having 100 on it that keeps then flowing around.
Yeah.
So it's the same with anything. The less takeout, it just means that keeps flowing over and over and over again. And that's, as an industry, that's what the industry should be aiming for.
Yeah, the more hand $1 goes through, the better off we are.
Well, because the difference between the punters and the bookmakers and the actual industry is the industry want the ticket clipped as often as it can because every time it gets clipped, that's where they get a little bit. So they want that dollar. Instead of going around 2 or 3 times, they want it to go around 20 or 30 times because every time it goes around, they get a little clip. But if you try and get too big a clip, then it doesn't go round as often. Because all of a sudden, if you keep doing that over and over again, where you're paying extra for it, and it's no different if you're buying hay or eggs or whatever.
Yeah.
If a bale of hay's $20 now, when you could have got it for $10 a while ago, you're buying half as much hay at $20.
Yeah.
That's the difference, and it doesn't go as far.
Yeah,
and
it's a good. That's actually a very good analogy.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Well, that's sort of where it's at. They've just priced everyone out of it.
So the exchange could work.
Yes.
Changing the way we present our product could definitely help.
Yep.
Are we in turmoil now? And when I say are we in turmoil, you said there before with about the 45%.
Yeah.
Pretty easy for Sky if they could get the content. Now that's probably the only thing we've got up our sleeve is we provide the content. But if they could get the content somewhere else, could they kick us? Would they kick us?
It depends. It's not beyond the realms.
Yeah.
Where they could just go. The thing is, it comes down to a business decision at the end of the day. Are they making money off it?
Yeah.
If they're not, there was a $1.3 billion write-down. They can't afford to be doing anything that's not making money at the minute.
Because instead of the next race at Bendigo, they might be better off having a Donald Trump speech and watching the fluctuations on that. And that's stupid, but the truth in a way.
I'm here with my Colts hat on, right? The NFL starts on Friday.
Yeah, I know.
Perfect product for bookies.
Yeah.
I don't have to pay product fees on it.
Yeah.
All the young guys are interested in it. It starts at 10 o'clock on Friday morning when all these guys, whether they're working on a building site or they're working in an office or they're lawyers or they're physios or whatever they're doing.
They get up first thing on a Sunday morning and they want to bet on college football.
Correct.
Yep.
And they're in a fantasy league with a dozen of their mates and there's chat groups.
Yep.
And this is what I've done. It blew the old guys away, and I've been out of sports bet for 10 years. When I was there, it was getting to the stage where, and the old guys couldn't get their heads around this, where the turnover on NBA was getting to the stage it was the same as AFL and NRL.
Yeah.
Now it's just gone completely past those, just because there's more content. But if you'd said to all the old timers that was the case, that's why you need to go. You almost need to, whether it's go to a pub or go to the local footy or wherever you see those groups of people, and go, what do we need to do to sort of get you involved or get you along or come and have a look at it? That's the other thing with the grassroots. A lot of it's run by community groups.
That then might evolve to come to Bendigo on a Wednesday night because they say, you know, we saw, a horse trained by Alan Tormey, went terrific. Oh, it's in. Let's go to Bendigo,
Or let's have the presentation night here, or let's go for a night out at the end of the season here, or something like that. Because this is the other disconnect they've got. The way the clubs operate is different from the rest of the industry. The clubs are essentially event companies, and the prize money is funded from the wagering dollar.
Yep.
The industry needs to be aware that they need to then go and get whatever punters and find out what they need, what they want, and what they can do to increase their interest and turnover on the sport.
Yeah.
Because that's how you're going to keep your prize money. The thing is, I think what I'd take out of it going forward is stem the bleeding, try and slow the decline down first, then try and get it back to reach your equilibrium, and then try and build it. But it's very hard in the current economic climate to be able to do that.
And I think that's one of the things I do want to get out there is, especially with social media, and I'm in the industry. I hate social media. This is how I make my living now. I actually hate it. People need to be aware when you're constantly putting negative out there, someone casually sees that.
Yep.
So a lot of that stuff needs to be taken away and in-house, and people turn around and say, we're allowed to say whatever we want. Yeah, definitely are. But just be aware that then when you turn around and you're saying, why are we racing for 4,500? There is repercussions right across the board. And I'm not telling anyone that's on that track, breeding horses or whatever, that we're all responsible. You might be the clean skin. But at the end of the day, we need to, as an industry, we need to have a look at what we put out, how we can improve it, and what we can change. And we can go to Matt Isaacs, we can go to anyone in HRV, it doesn't matter, and ask them figures or how do we fix it or whatever. We're better off, in a way, stopping, going, as you said, go down to Morong, watch a local football and say, listen, do you know anything about harness racing? Especially this weekend. Find out how many people know the Eureka's on. Because in our bubble, we all know the Eureka's on. And so we think everyone knows it. But I reckon you'd only be one step away. And people would not know what it is. I know my daughter, in fact, I'd nearly say Marie would not know the Eureka's on this weekend.
Well,
I don't mean that in a nasty way.
No, I've got kids that are school age. Go and have a look at what they're doing.
Right.
Go and have a look how they're consuming things now. They're not... Who sits down anymore at 6 o'clock to watch the evening news and gets up the following morning to get the newspaper because that's where they get their news? Doesn't happen like that anymore.
No.
And if you're thinking that that's how it's still done, the game's passed you by.
And that is a reality, and there is so many other realities about these games and about the way the world's going. There is some chance we're going to lose a TV station in Australia within the next 2 years.
Yep.
And that'll be Channel 10, unless things change. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know why it's Channel 10. And people will turn around and might say, oh, you're crazy and all the rest. Papers are gone.
Yeah.
The radios are gone, like podcasts are taking over the radio. Now we listen to 927 and we listen to the Sky Channel feed. So when we get bumped to Sky 2, we're actually getting bumped off Sky Radio as well.
But the thing about that is that has also come down to the cost.
Yes. Yeah.
You can't keep doing the
I'm
same.
not potting in people for doing it. No.
It's an area, if you're not making money out of it, you can't keep going and thinking that you're going to.
Yep.
Especially in the current environment. If it's not working, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether you're in harness racing or wagering or hospitality or whatever, if you're doing the same thing you were 3 years ago, you're going to get eaten alive. Because the costs have gone up, the turnover and revenue's not there, you have to adjust.
Yep.
So I still think there's some innovation that they could do with the radio. The radio still, I think, has a part to play. Smart people are involved. You've seen Craig Hutchison come in and set up SEN and do all that sort of stuff and market it that way. RSN, which I love and I'm a regular contributor to, it's had to be sort of dragged along now to get the product to where it is and to try and run it as efficiently as they can. I can see the same thing happening at racing.com. They're going to have to trim that up. What I took out of Mr. Morrison's statement that he made on RSN a couple of weeks ago as the new CEO of RV, he's going to cut every cost he can out of RV for the next 12 months so that in 12 months' time, he's buying himself 12 months before he's going to have to cut the prize money because the wagering revenue's not there and that's what drives the prize money. The thing is, there's no incentive from the clubs, because they're event companies, to actually do anything to drive the turnover because they don't see any direct benefit of it. They're not going to go out of their way and spend money to get me on course to turn over more money on their product because what am I going to do? I might have a meal and I might buy 4 or 5 beers, but I'm not. That's the only thing I'm doing to contribute to their bottom line.
Yeah.
By me wagering more, could you have a venue mode where if you were on course you got a tax discount? Something like that. That might get more people here.
Yeah, but then does that help the government? And if it doesn't help the government's going to say, well, no, we're happy with the tax system the way we are. So
yes, that's another message that the industry needs to sell to the government then.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, that it's the trajectory of the industry, Tabcorp and the government have all been on the same sort of thing. The only respite that all three codes might get, hopefully, and this is a part of a political statement probably too, is if there is a significant change in government, like what we've seen in the Northern Territory, what looks like it's going to be happening in Queensland, what looks like it'll probably happen federally, at least then it won't be so close where the governing party will have to do deals with the minority parties, which are the ones that are the real threat.
Yeah.
Because no matter what we say and what we do, they're the ones that, if it was up to them, they'd go round to every kennel and every stable tomorrow and open the doors and just let them all out.
Yeah.
They'd have none of it.
Yeah.
And any reasonable person doesn't want that.
No.
Because that's another message they have to get better at selling, is that how well looked after all these animals are. They're probably better looked after than 90% of domestic pets. But that's another message that we need to sell, and that's where you need to capture the hearts and minds of the youngsters. Could it be that you go to the local school and say, guys, come and have a look at the horses on Sunday. There's free passes. It's free. Bring mum and dad down. Even if we've got to do one thing that country racing Victoria has done very well. They've given out those packs. I got a house full of them. Because every time I took my kids to the country races, you'd get a backpack that had a drink bottle.
Have a reason to remember the meetings.
And the thing is, that the kids then, we had that. If the kids go and have a fun day,
they'll go back and have another fun day.
They're then asking the parents to take you back. And if the kids are occupied, and Bendigo and Cup Night do it really well here, they normally have the petting zoo and the jumping castle and laser tag and all that sort of gear. It means that I can bring my 2 kids out here and they're going to be reasonably occupied for at least half the night, which means that I can have a breather, have a rest. I can take in what's happening on the track, and it's an enjoyable night out for everyone. Everyone's going to have different needs, but I think that's something that, unless you go out, it's not just canvassing small groups. You probably need to go to all your WSPs and say, give us as much feedback about our product, what's happening on it, what you think we can do, because they're the ones that are the connection between you and the customer.
Yeah.
That's another thing that gets lost in all of this, because the rally of the kindred bodies is funny, isn't it? You've got the breeders, the trainers, the drivers, but the biggest participant group is actually the punters, who are paying to put the show on.
And the reason our stake money is dropping is because the punters aren't punting on our product, and yet we don't listen to them.
Yeah,
and that's actually one of the reasons you're here.
Yeah, because we need to find out why.
And please, I understand why they didn't give you a lot of time, because they didn't have a lot of time.
No.
So there's that other reason. Juppy, I'm going to say thank you, but I'm not going to say it's the last one. What I actually hoping we can get some feedback.
Yeah.
And we can readdress it. We might even sit down with some other people.
Yep.
There's a couple of guys up there that go okay on the talk as well. We could even have another way around it. Almost brainstorm as to how we can do the game a bit differently.
I think what we nearly need to do is you not only get the guys that are rusted on, like you need it tiered. You need to get the guys that are here that I know that if I go to a trot meeting, there's a chance I'm going to see 2 or 3 of these guys. You need to talk to some of them. You need to talk. So you're probably, let's call them the one or 2 percenters that make a living out of it. Then the next year, and then we need to try and get as many recreationals that we can speak to. The guys that have a passing interest that'll put a quaddie on, those sort of blokes that have some interest and people that have no interest, you need to get all those sort of groups in and find out what each of them needs, because without that, it's going to keep going the way that it is.
Yeah,
which is sad. And the thing is, if you can tell me that the economy is going to turn around in 6 months, that's going to be...
I can tell you it's not going to for 3, so...
There you go.
Yeah, so you're in all sorts. You keep saying it's going like this. Every person be saying, we need it to go like that. I can tell you right now, we actually needed to do that. Stop.
You needed to go from there. If you can get it to there, you're doing well. And if you can get it back to equilibrium, you've done an amazing job. Because the writing was on the wall before COVID, where the turnover was dropping. COVID masked all that when they handed everything out, and no one could do anything else, and it was the only show in town, and everything went through the roof. It levelled out after COVID, and then the current economic situations kicked in, and then we've seen it express. And don't think it's just harness racing. Don't think I'm picking on them.
This is what I want to get people to be aware of. It is not just our industry. This is the reality.
So harness lost 25 million. I think the greyhounds either lost 24 or 26. RV have lost money, and they're cutting things back to the bone to prevent a prize money cut in 12 months, to kick the can down the road for another 12 months before they have to start cutting prize money.
Yep.
That's going to happen. You can either have less races and distribute that money. That's another thing. That's another thing that needs to be asked of all these groups. Have we got an oversaturation of product? Because the old tab model was keep putting it on. The more you put on, the more they'll bet. And
which is flawed.
It doesn't work that way.
No.
Because if you put on less races that are more interesting, then
bigger fields, bigger field size, bigger intrigue.
Yeah. And but also there's no build up to it. We've run 15 races or something in Victoria today.
Yeah,
did we need to run that many?
I've been to a few of them.
Yeah. But did we need to run that many? Is the market telling us, the industry, that we need 15 races on?
And in that as well, is that the greyhounds as well, and is that the whole thing? Right, we're not sure exactly where we got to there, but we are going to tighten the belt. Juppy, thank you.
Not a problem.
There was one edit in that. It wasn't actually an edit. It's because, again, just then, it only records for 20 minutes this, and so I knew roughly where we were at. So, I got my own pages. You can't beat me. I got Facebook pages and everything, so don't worry about that. I got it all sorted. It won't be the last time.
No.
I want to do some more. We'll probably get you on the show on Loose Lines, especially maybe Q&A one night or something like that for people. But I want to get people thinking about what's going on. And I wanted people to listen and be able to understand it. And I want participants to be aware we can control our destiny to a degree. Put on an entertaining show, and from that, Danny Hibbert's just started talking. Danny, I've written all sorts of that one. His mum will tell me off. Daniel's just started talking. The race callers have an obligation to sell the story. The drivers have an obligation to put on a show, present, go from there. But we also need to engage with punters to be able to grow it and see what they physically want to see.
I'm going to throw the challenge out to everyone who watches this. Go and ask 2 to 3 people that you know in your life that aren't involved in harness racing, what they know about it and what it would take to get them involved or interested. Because at least that way you'll be getting some feedback as to what the rest of the community needs.
Juppy, thanks mate.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks buddy.